Hey everyone, Chimera Colt here. I wanted to do an updated video about Oscilio for 2025. He's gotten a lot better since the original Rosetta meta due to some new cards and a shift in the meta, so I just wanted to talk about a few changes. I'm not going to do a full deck tech in this video. I will put a link in the description to my top 8 deck list from Calling Kansas City. My deck list stays around that, plus or minus a few cards, so if you want to build the deck, that'll be a good reference to look at. If you're looking for how to play Oscilio at a more just like basic functional level, check out the previous 2 videos on my channel that go over that. So starting off, the biggest thing that Oscilio has gotten is Consigned to Cosmos Shock. So I remember before they spoiled this card, I was thinking, wow, if Oscilio ever gets a 0-cost shock, this is going to be amazing for the deck. And it didn't matter what color it was, it didn't matter if it blocked or not, just any 0-cost shock would be awesome. So the fact that this is yellow and blocks 3 makes it so good. It doesn't matter that Consigned to Cosmos is basically unplayable. Adding in a shock for 0 cost lets you do some crazy efficient plays, such as play out a Sigil of Brilliance, so Volzar up to 1, play a Blast to Oblivion, Volzar up to 2, shock, respond to the shock, trigger Blast to Oblivion, bounce Sigil of Brilliance, draw a card, replay Sigil of Brilliance, activate Volzar. Now your shock is going to be for 5 at that point because we've played 4 cards plus the 1. Remember, we played this twice, and then you can arsenal whatever card you got back. So it enables insanely efficient 3-card hands such as this. This could be replaced for any Sigil, really. That wouldn't have been possible before with the other shocks because you would need another card to pitch, right? So that's one of the things that it's done for the deck. The other thing is just having a certain consistency of having 9 shocks now is huge for the deck because it lets you play out so many more hands without the need for finding extra action points. So another big change I've done with the deck is actually going up to the full 9 copies of shocks. I'm playing all 3 null shocks. Sometimes null shock does get cycled away, but because it's a yellow, you can, pitch it when you need to. Just having those shocks is really important against Gravy for closing out games where your opponent's at low life, just for having a certain level of arcane in the deck. And like I said, getting those arcane payoffs that don't require action points can be really good for making your non-combo hands function. Quick note on the Gravy matchup while we're talking about the shocks. One of the most important things against Gravy is to be able to have a shock in hand, or rather an arsenal. I'll often keep one around an arsenal, in order to disrupt their ally attacks. Because you can, while their ally is attacking you, you can kill their ally with a shock and a Bolzar activation, and this both prevents the damage that would be dealt by the ally and gets it off the field, so it's a very efficient play. If the ally has go again, it's also going to stop them from getting that action point back because the go again doesn't resolve until we get to the resolution step. So if you kill it before then, they don't get the action point back. That's something important to remember for your own Gone in a Flashes too, is that if you give a Gone in a Flash go again and bounce it before you get to the resolution step, you are not going to get the action point back from go again. So a shift that's less so to do strictly with new cards or meta and more just a shift in how I've played the deck is I focused a lot more on setup. So before, where I would often prioritize playing out a Sigil of Brilliance in order to get that 5-card hand, I'll often try to prioritize arsenaling it instead. This helps me to set up Blast to Oblivion plays. So I'm on 6 copies of Blast to Oblivion now, the full red and the full yellow. And some of your craziest turns that you can pull off involve Blast to Oblivion and Sigil of Brilliance, or any of your other sigils, although Sigil of Brilliance leads to the highest damage turns because of drawing so many cards. But what I'll often do is prioritize arsenaling a Sigil to try and set up those bigger turns with Blast to Oblivion, because that relies on having the Sigil able to play that turn rather than popping at the start of the turn. And Sigils are very safe arsenal targets because they're instants, so you could always just play it out in response to a Command and Conquer. Another good target for your setup turns are Electromagnetic Somersault. Again, this is a great arsenal target for setting up those Blast to Oblivion combo turns, or you can just block with 2 attack actions on an attack, play this from arsenal, bring them back. Channel Lightning Valley can be another great one to set up too. Channel Lightning Valley can be kind of difficult to keep around in this deck because you don't have a lot of cards you actually want to pitch to, or rather that you are actually able to pitch to. So if you're able to, a lot of times I'll prioritize arsenaling it over playing it out on a turn where I'm not able to keep it around. Obviously, it depends on your hand and if you need the instant to, trigger something else. So it's case dependent, but the point is I'm trying to set up for turns more. Null Shock, another great advantage of that is that it's a card you can actually pitch to keep Channel Lightning Valley around. And you'll find a lot of times on turns where you have extra cards in hand, either because you did some kind of Blast to Oblivion draw combo, or because you found yourself with full tempo and not the action points to fully convert your hand, just being able to keep a Channel Lightning Valley around can be worth, losing some value on a Null Shock. Another card I've loved playing is Eternal Inferno. I really only keep it at one copy, and I'm partially just showing it off in this video because I really like this full art. But with a lot of the most impactful turns in this deck being Blast to Oblivion plays, if you're doing a Blast to Oblivion Lightning Greaves combo turn, you're often going to find yourself with extra action points. So that's where you're actually able to make use of the Surge off of this. When you have your Aether Bindings popped, if you're against an opponent that's running little to no AB, you can actually get the Surge off multiple times, which is, I think, the most I've played this for in one turn is 3 times, but in theory, you could get higher. One of the cards that enables Eternal Inferno, if you're not on a combo turn, is Eclectic Magnetism. So the easiest way is you just give the Eclectic Magnetism go again from Embodiment of Lightning, or you've generated an extra action point off of Blink, and then you're able to actually make use of the Surge effect. One important thing to note too about Eternal Inferno is it deals 4 arcane damage to any target, so this is one of the cards that can get something like a Chum off the board if you really need to in the Graveyard matchup. Another change in the deck is that I've actually been prioritizing playing Lightning Press over Electrostatic Discharge. So Electrostatic Discharge works better with God in a Flash because you're able to play it on a God in a Flash chain link, bounce the God in a Flash back to hand, then replay it again. Whereas you're not actually able to get both the buff on a God in a Flash and the bounce effect from the same card on Lightning Press. What you are able to do is play a God in a Flash, respond after you play it before it becomes an attack, and Lightning Press it. That way you'll get it to 7 and you haven't used the bounce ability from God in a Flash yet, and you'll be able to still bounce it back later in the chain link after dealing your 7 damage. But why I've been prioritizing Lightning Press over Electrostatic Discharge is that Lightning Press works better with Blast to Oblivion and Flittering Charge, whereas Electrostatic Discharge works better with God in a Flash specifically, and we're playing 9 copies of Blast to Oblivion and Flittering Charge versus only 3 copies of God in a Flash, so that's why I prioritize it in that way now. Next up, we have Old Knocker. This is a common from High Seas, and it's been a great addition to the deck. It just, as an instant, you tap your hero, which Oscilio doesn't have any other ways to tap in this deck, so it's a free cost, and you gain a resource at instant speed. This is basically an upgrade over Blossom of Spring. For starters, it blocks 1 if you really need it to, but the main upgrade is that you can generate the resource at instant speed instead of doing it proactively. The main reason this matters is if you start a turn off by presenting a God in a Flash or a Blast to Oblivion, and you're not sure yet if you want a combo, maybe it depends on how your opponent blocks or something else your opponent does, then you're able to activate this at instant speed instead of having to commit to it before you present the attack by presenting Blossom of Spring. In addition, just because of how fast a lot of the games go now, I'm often playing this over Fyendal Spring Tunic. So if you're newer to the deck or newer to the game and you don't have a Spring Tunic, you can totally just play Old Knocker. You don't need to invest in a Tunic yet. Right now, the only matchup I'm playing it in is playing Fyendal Spring Tunic is against Verdance. All right, one more new addition to the deck is Calming Breeze. This came out in the Hunted. It says the next 3 times you'll be dealt damage this turn, prevent 1 of that damage. This is the same as the discard effect from Shelter the Storm, but because this is an instant, we can cycle it to Oscilio if we have tempo on the turn and aren't able to use it. This is mostly really good against Syndra. Because Syndra relies on her daggers oftentimes to get resources or to grant something like Cut Through, Go Again, having access to this prevention is really good. Even just the threat of this is going to make a Syndra, think twice about how they're playing out their turn. And because Syndra is so present in the meta right now, I like having a few copies of these in my sideboard. So like I said, the way I've played the deck has changed a little to focus more on setting up for combo turns. The other thing that I think will help you playing on Oscilio a lot is to just think very proactively about how your games will play out and how your turns can play out. So one example of this is that Go Again is one of the more difficult things to get in the deck, aside from when you do your Lightning Greaves turn. So you want to prioritize trying to make sure you'll have access to Go Again on future turns. And this can mean something like, prioritizing bouncing a Sigil of Conductivity with a Blast to Oblivion in order to get that embodiment of lightning on the board. It can be keeping a blink around in your arsenal instead of cycling it away. Just try to think about what's going to enable your future turns. Another thing is think about how the overall matchup is going to play out at a macro level. So for example, against Verdance, keep in mind that once you get down to a certain life, they're going to have that kill pressure on you. So you kind of want to play out that match patiently. Don't let yourself get into that kill range, because if you get into that kill range, it can present you from, throwing out a big turn when you draw one, because you need to be worried about getting killed by Storm Striders. So if instead you're able to play the matchup kind of slowly, block or pitch to AB when you don't have a super good hand, then you're able to save your life total for when you later on down the road do have a great hand. So those are a few quick updates on Oscilio. Like I said, I'll have a deck list in the description, and thank you for checking out the video.